Welcome to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. I'm your host, Shannon Ables, and whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, or sitting down with a hot cup of tea or a café au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome to the 131st episode of the Simple Sophisticate. I'm so happy you can join me today. We have a lot to talk about. Now, you may be used to lists here on this podcast, but I've got a doozy of a list for you today. So sit back, get comfortable, or get walking or jogging or hopping into your plane or your seat in the car. Get situated, get comfortable, and hopefully you'll find, if not just one piece of inspiration, multitudes of inspiration as we look to the end of 2016 and really look to 2017 as an opportunity for a rebirth, a new opportunity to be a better version of ourselves. The inspiration came from a book I just happened to come across in the bookstore, was not even looking for. And as soon as I saw it, I said, definitely have to read this book. Did so in one afternoon, and here is the episode that came out of that reading. But before I get to today's topic, I want to give you a hint as to what today's petit plaisir is. Last week on episode 130, I shared a French film with you, a playful romantic comedy called Blind Date. Well, this week I have an even more delightful French film for you. So 2 weeks back to back, if you're a Francophile, if you're trying to improve your French, or you just want to sit back and watch a lighthearted comedy set in Paris nonetheless, I have a film that you're going to love. So stay tuned at the end of today's episode and I'll share all of it with you and even share a glimpse of the trailer with you as well. But now back to the topic. Today's episode is titled Invaluable Lessons About Attaining Happiness. In fact, I'm going to share 38 lessons for attaining happiness. And it all was inspired from a book by the British philosopher Bertrand Russell. And the book is titled The Conquest of Happiness, because as he sees it, and as he reveals right away in his title, is that happiness is not something we're born with. It is something we have to find. It is a journey. It is something we have to understand what it is when we come across it. So we're going to break that down today as he has shared with us and hopefully cause one or two aha moments. I know when I read this book, I had more than a few. I felt like this book was way overdue for me having read it, but also I know I was finally ready to read it. And maybe that's why I didn't get the opportunity to read it until now. So I want to start off with a very simple quote by Joan Baez. She simply states, "As long as one keeps searching, the answers come." And in that vein of, I would have loved to have this information earlier, but I have a feeling I probably wasn't ready to receive it. This quote spoke to me. I just kept searching, as we all are, I believe. And when we know what we're looking for, we're more apt to find it and to really hone in on it and figure out how to integrate it into our lives. So let's get into this. Life in many ways feels as though it is a treasure hunt. However, I have some good news. If my experience is any evidence, Joan Baez's quote that I've just shared rings entirely true. Case in point, my stumbling across British philosopher Bertrand Russell's the book, The Conquest of Happiness. I happened to have been perusing my local bookstore, stopping in to pick up another book that I had ordered when I came across the simple, bright yellow cover of The Conquest of Happiness. Mind you, the copyright is in 1930, and as the new introduction, which was written in 2012 by philosophy professor at Tufts University Daniel C. Dennett reminds, Russell's views, while quite progressive at the time, clearly have laid bare his ignorance about women and minorities. However, these should be set aside as we look through the lens as though he is speaking about all people, because what he reveals gave me reason to take a deep breath of appreciation. And I'll explain what that means as we keep going through this episode. As Russell reminds straight away with his title, happiness is something we must cultivate. It is not something that we are born with. Now, this is not to say that we are born unhappy. That's not what I'm getting at, but we're really not conditioned yet. Some of us may be more apt to see the glass as half full based on certain genetics, but it's really more nurture than nature that's going to determine how we find happiness or if we find a more content life or not. However, we are born, each of us, into a culture and a world we did not choose. We must come to understand our place in it, understand the capabilities that are innately ours, and how to offer them to the world, all the while protecting ourselves and our vulnerable heart. Russell offers wise words about what we can and cannot do, what is true and what we should let go of as once assumed as true along the path to attaining happiness and identifying what we think is causing our unhappiness. I have gone through and found 38 points that he shares that throughout welcoming as either habits, practices, approaches, or shifts in our thoughts and beliefs can usher in a true happiness we may have never thought obtainable. So I'm really just, I wouldn't say summarizing, but I'm just really breaking down the ones that caught my attention. And there are far more than 38. I highly recommend you picking this book up. And if you're anything like me, you'll probably annotate it and mark it up quite extensively. But let's get started with this list of 38 ways to attain happiness. First, determine what you most desire. It's that simple. Really be honest with yourself. Take some time. We talk about this a lot on this blog and podcast. Get to know yourself. What is it that you truly seek? Then let's get into the list. So technically I have 39 for you. So this is number one. Once you've determined what you desire, number one, diminish your preoccupation with yourself. This was huge, and it begins with this idea of thinking that something must be wrong with us or that we constantly have to be fixing because we're not perfect yet. Let go of that. Stop meditating on your perceived sins and shortcomings. And I'll explain what you then should shift it to. So number one is to diminish your preoccupation with yourself. Number two, this is what you should shift it to. Focus primarily on external objects. I'm not talking about those shiny car in the house. Listen, this is what he states. Focus on the state of the world, attainment of knowledge in a variety of avenues, and individuals for whom you feel affection. So you're looking outside of yourself, trying to understand, trying to see the world that you really live in, not the world that maybe you have been blinded to. Maybe you've isolated yourself. Maybe you're scared of going out in the world. He's saying, no, you got to go out there. You got to see the world, try to make sense of it, and also learn how to have those connections with those that you love, showing them that you love them, not being afraid of showing them that you love them. So that's number two. Number three, practice moderation. The quote that danced around in my mind immediately that we always hear is moderation in all things, even moderation. But in this case, moderation, practice it in all areas of your life. It's not about splurging constantly. It's not about squandering or being restrictive constantly. So while, yes, there's a time to be frugal, there's also a time to invest, and knowing moderation in the things that you love doing and what you love eating, your pleasures, moderation. Number four, aspire to be interested in a variety of things. The more opportunities for happiness you have, so the more interest, in other words, that you truly enjoy, the less you are at the mercy of fate. Since if you lose one of those interests or something happens to maybe a loved one you enjoy having time with, maybe they move, maybe they pass away, maybe your relationship just changes, something shifts and you're no longer in the same spot. As long as you have a lot of interests that you sincerely love, you will have something to fall back on, and you won't feel as though as huge of a gap is in your life when that happens. You'll have more of a net. So number four is aspire to be interested in a variety of things. Number five, even when an unexpected negative event takes place, let's go extreme, maybe a car accident, or maybe an earthquake, maybe an event that just derails your itinerary plans. It can actually bring you pleasure too, is what Bertrand Russell states. And at first I said, what? Are you kidding me? His explanation is this. You can appreciate the knowledge that you have gained to better understand how the world works and reduce any unnecessary fear. And you can pass that knowledge on to people. And by helping them, you increase your contentment. You feel as though you are helping others to not have to feel the fear that's unnecessary about something that you have firsthand experience living through. So it's a little bit a different way to look at it, but I think it's a great shifting of perspective. Number 6, bolster your energy so when you have free time, you can pursue what interests you without restraint. One of the things he talks about is that part of the reason happiness tends to be hard to attain is because we don't feel liberated or free to do what truly comes natural to us that really makes us happy. In other words, we have to go to work. The boss tells us we have to do these things. We have to be there a certain time of day for so many hours. No matter what's going on in our lives, no matter how much energy we have to be there. And just different rules and things like that. Not that you want to go breaking the law or the rules, but it's not what you know you could be giving. Maybe you have another passion. It's just not making any money right now, but it's really what you want to be doing. And so when we are more constricted and less liberated, we have then less energy to dedicate to what we truly do love when we finally have that time off or that evening when we get home from work. And so what he states is that being smart with the time when we're not doing what we love, be smart with it. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Make sure you're eating well. Make sure you're taking care of your health so that when you do get that free time to do whatever you want, you have the energy to do it, to pursue it, and get lost in it and lose all track of time. Number 7, vow to have a zest for life. In other words, have an incessant curiosity. I couldn't agree with him more, simply stated. Number 8, understand this truth. Affection is given to those who least demand it. The more content you are in the life you have created for yourself, with regards to the things that you can control, meaning the interests that you pursue, the curiosities you've pursued, and the hobbies that you're interested in. You're not searching outside of yourself for others or other worlds or cities or towns to entertain you. You already know how to entertain yourself, and you find great joy and contentment in that. And so you're not asking for others to give of their time and energy to you because you know how to entertain yourself. And so therefore, affection is given freely. You are secure in who you are. You're content in your life, and that is attractive for friends, for partners, for family members. People want to be around those who love their life because they want to figure out how to love their life too. So number 8 is understand this truth. Affection is given to those who least demand it. Number 9, those who face life with a feeling of security are much happier than the contrary. Now, none of us can choose where we're born and to whom we're born to. We have very little, if any, control when we're young. But as we become an adult, once we begin doing that investigating, we can figure out ways to become more secure financially, emotionally. These are things we can figure out. Some of our journeys are going to be longer and more difficult than others. But the fact is, it's worth the journey because when you feel secure, so therefore you feel comfort, you feel safe, you can be content. And when you have contentment, you're content, therefore you're comfortable. You have a confidence that you exude and you go out into that world. And we talked about this last week in episode 130. Confidence is created or cultivated by comfort and vice versa. It's a cycle. So knowing that you feel secure is actually going to help in all arenas of your life. In all arenas of your life. That's number 9. Number 10, you are more likely to realize what you fear by believing in it. So stop dwelling on what you hope doesn't happen, what you're fearful of. Either figure out how to attack it or make sure you know how to handle it should it happen, and know that you're doing everything in your power to make sure it won't happen. And then let go and focus on what you do want to happen. Because more often than not, studies have shown, psychology has shown, what we visualize materializes, because that's what we're looking for. Number 11, self-confidence comes from being accustomed to receiving as much of the right sort of affection as the one has the need for. So this is that feeling of affection in a healthy, non-dependent relationship. This starts with the parents that we are raised with, our siblings, our friends, our family, our acquaintances even. And when it's a healthy affection, when it's non-demanding, when it's unconditional, or at least just simply giving without asking something in return. When we have, and everyone's going to be a little different, and he goes into deeper depth about this, we feel a sense of self-confidence. We have a different sense of calm about the world we live in as we strive out to do and try different things and live our best lives. So number 11 is self-confidence comes from being accustomed to receiving as much of the right sort of affection as one has the need for. And again, everyone will need different amounts, but the key is that the right sort of affection is healthy and non-dependent. Number 12, a person who is hardy and adventurous can endure a great deal without damage. Going back to that point, in number 10, what we fear, if we keep thinking about it, often materializes, and then the opposite of that is also true. For those that are adventurous and hardy, if you are believing that you can make this impossible feat a reality, you're actually more likely to attain it than not. And those who are going into such a situation thinking of everything that could possibly go wrong are less likely to have success. So be adventurous, be hardy, trust yourself, dive in, and you'll be amazed by how few horrible things happen and how more amazing things happen. Number 13, the best type of affection is reciprocally life-giving. Each receives affection with joy and gives it without effort. And each finds the whole world more interesting in consequence of the existence of this reciprocal happiness. We all want to be in a relationship where the person we're with doesn't feel obligated to give love back. We want them to want to give the love, the affection. And that is the reciprocal life-giving force that begins to happen. To try to make someone want to be with us and vice versa, someone's trying to make us love them, is never going to be a place to find happiness, true contentment. And this is hard because sometimes we can't figure out why someone wouldn't, but there are a lot of people in this world and not everyone is going to mesh with us, and that's okay. That is absolutely okay. The key thing is there are a lot of people in this world. Wish them well and move on. Number 14, affection in the sense of genuine reciprocal interest of two persons in each other, not solely as means to each other's good, but rather as a combination having a common goal, is one of the most important elements of real happiness. So when both parties, so this really piggybacks on number 13, when both parties have a genuine interest in each other, that common interest, and it's going to be different for every other partnership, friendship, family member, romantic partner. If you sincerely want what's best for that other person, that combination is powerful. And it is one of the most important elements of real happiness. Number 15, a capacity for genuine affection is one of the marks of someone who has escaped from the prison of one's self-absorption. So one of the first things we talked about on today's list was to stop being self-absorbed. When you're able to give love and affection freely, it means you're not sitting there going, well, I'm going to give love and hope they'll get it back. No, the person who is not self-absorbed, according to Bertrand Russell, doesn't care what the response is. They're just giving because they They care about this person. They're thinking of them. They love them. Whatever the connection is, it's a positive giving force. And whatever comes back, great. Nothing comes back, fine. But it's when you let go of expectation that you really set yourself free and find more contentment. Number 16, of all forms of caution, caution in love is perhaps the most fatal to true happiness. We've heard this quote before, and it's definitely something worth thinking and pondering. I'll say it one more time. Of all forms of caution, caution in love is perhaps the most fatal to true happiness. And the caution often comes from fear of being vulnerable, which is something we've talked about before. It's completely human. We don't want to get hurt. But in order to truly connect, in order to be genuine, we have to give, as he says, without caution. Now, granted, it's baby steps. Give a little, give a little, give a little. But each time, making it genuine, not editing. Number 17, one must cultivate external interests that bring rest and do not call for any action, rather allow you to simply enjoy. I like this one, and I think it's another reminder why we really have to have different interests, a lot of different interests, because if we're only interested in one thing, we can wear ourselves out. And sometimes we'll run up against problems in, say, our workplace, problems we just don't know how to fix at that moment. And what Russell reminds is that when we get our mind off of what we're trying to fix, we shut the door on that problem temporarily, and we go to another interest. Maybe it's spending time with our family. Maybe it's spending time with our dogs. Maybe it's traveling and exploring another hobby. When we free our mind of what seems unsolvable at the moment, we're letting it rest. We're letting it step away from that, take a breath, and really just get lost in something we enjoy. And often, that's when you'll wake up in the middle of the night with a great idea. Or you're on your walk and you're listening to that podcast that you enjoy listening to, or that music that really gets you going. Your mind's off of your worries, and all of a sudden an idea will pop because you've let your mind rest with regards to the topic that has had you worried. So you've got to have separation. Multiple interests is going to be a huge factor in increasing your happiness. And they have to be genuine interests. And that's why don't follow the crowd. If you don't like yoga, don't go to yoga. If you don't like knitting, don't do knitting. Figure out what you sincerely are interested in. And let those things help you solve problems in other areas of your life when you run up against obstacles. Number 18, never ignore opportunities to gain knowledge. There are endless bits and pieces of information out there for you to absorb and learn from. Keep your eyes open. Keep the doors and windows open. And keep learning. Just keep learning. Remain incessantly curious. 19, contemplate what makes greatness of one's soul. When one is capable of greatness of soul, it will open wide the windows of the mind, letting the winds blow freely upon it from every operation of the universe. So this is really about broadening your perspective, keeping an open mind, seeing what information flows by and through and into you to absorb, to consider, to contemplate. Number 19 is contemplate what makes greatness of one's soul. 20, during times of grief, loss, or pain, turn towards something that is not the source of anxiety. And this is going back to a previous point. This is where having many varied interests comes in quite handy, because you can then fall back on something else that you enjoy doing that has no direct tie to what you have lost, what has maybe been taken away from you. And you can shift your mind and not dwell on it as much. Yes, you need to go through the stages of grief, depending on what it is that was, didn't work out. But then get busy doing something that's not tied to it at all, to let your mind sort itself out. Give it its time to process everything. 21, one cultivates happiness and therefore must find ways of coping with the multitudinous causes of unhappiness. By choosing to unearth the answers, happiness expands. So as much as we try to figure out what makes us happy, so what we desire, what we love and truly are interested in, the same token goes, as soon as we know what we love, we all start figuring out, nope, not something I'm interested in. And when we unearth those answers, they're almost as powerful because we can immediately know what path not to go down, just as we know which path we do want to go down. So it's a two-way street, and both of them help us out in the long run. So 21 is one cultivates happiness and therefore finds many ways of coping with the multitudinous ways or causes of unhappiness. Number 22, happiness is an achievement, not a gift. No one else but you can figure out how to make yourself happy. No one else but you. You may love giving affection to your partner, to your nieces and nephews, to your friends, to your family. That brings you joy. But that's the thing. You have found relationships that are healthy, that lift you up. It's something you have figured out. But it's because you are giving that's making you happy. And as we said, the more interest you have, even when one of those falls apart, you're going to be okay because you've cultivated through the knowledge of yourself things that make you happy, ways of living that make you content. And it is not something that you are given on the first day you arrive into this world. It's never something someone can give to you. You give it to yourself. So number 22, happiness is an achievement, not a gift. Number 23, do your best. And in parentheses next to best, I want you to think about effort. So you're giving your best effort. And then, this is such a relief to hear this when I read this, then leave it up to fate. In other words, resign. Doesn't mean walk away, but you let it go. It means you're letting it go. I've done my best. This is all I can do. Stop worrying about the outcome because guess what? Even if you don't get the exact outcome you want, you've learned and progressed already and made progress for the project or learning opportunities for others about a particular thing. And you can't change how other people respond to it. You can't change whether or not it's going to get the award. You can't change whether or not the publisher is going to say yes. But you can have all that knowledge and experience in your hat that you've earned figuring out as you gave your best effort. So do your best and then leave it up to fate. So give it your all and then let it go. They'll bring you so much more peace of mind. There's nothing else you can do once you know you've given it your all. 24, having an unconquerable hope means it must be large and impersonable. In other words, have hopes for humanity and being okay with the progress you made, no matter how small, even if the goal wasn't reached yet. As long as you're aiming for something to help improve or better the world or the life you live for those you live with, as long as you know you gave it your all, you've made progress. Even if it doesn't hit the target yet, you've made progress. And that's what allows you to let go. And that's the unconquerable hope. Unconquerable hope can't be dashed because you know you gave it your all. And that's all you can do. 25, let go of worry, fret, and irritation as they serve absolutely no purpose. Let it go. Remember how we talked about earlier that what we fear materializes? That's where worry is. Let go of that worry. If you're worried about it, then do something about it to assuage that worry in any way that you possibly can. Once you realize, I can't do anything else about this, I've got to move on. That's where you say, I've done my best and I've got to let go. So a lot of these tie in together. Number 26, in times of quandary, it is better to do nothing than to do harm. So this one's a tricky one sometimes because we think, I'm not going to do anything at all. And then nobody will ever be hurt. And I'll never, me personally will never be hurt. And that's not really what we're talking about. What we do mean though is if you're looking at a situation and you know that if I make this one decision, I'm going to either upset all these people or make a huge change and it's going to be very disruptive. If you're not confident that that's the best decision, then don't make it yet. But when you're confident, even if it's going to cause that change, step forward. That's, I think, and it's all going to depend on the certain scenario. But in other words, take your time. Don't just, might as well try it and see what happens. Well, do some investigating, do some research, and then dive in so that you are choosing to do something that you sincerely believe in. Doesn't mean it's always going to work out. Remember that whole thing, best effort and then resign. But it does mean if you're just not sure, you're in that state of quandary, don't do anything yet. Just hold on. Don't make that purchase just yet. If you're just not sure about it yet, just wait. You'll know with time. 27. A certain kind of resignation is involved in the willingness to face the truth about ourselves. As we get to know ourselves, as much as initially we didn't want to accept certain things, it could be just starting very simply about our physicality. Okay, I can't run real fast. No, I'm going to be determined. I'm going to run as fast as I can. But you're better at doing something else. You were made to do something more amazing. Let the other people who can run brilliantly run. Accept that and step into your brilliance. Figure out what your brilliance is. You can still love running, but maybe that's not where you should be going into the professional field. Initially, those things are hard to face up to. And that's just a generic example. But they actually bring a lot of contentment. We step into the fact that, okay, I am 37. It's never going to be any days where I'm not 37 or younger. Own it. Get excited about it. And strive forward. That is liberating in many ways. Number 28. Nothing is more fatiguing than to believe things that are only a myth or false. Oh, this is a huge one. This is where you always want to try to gain as much knowledge as possible at all times, forever and ever and always. If you are stuck in a way of thinking that isn't serving you, but yet you haven't done any investigation to see why it's not serving you, this is exhausting. This can be absolutely exhausting. So maybe something isn't working out. Ask yourself, why isn't it working out? And then start searching for experts who know something more than you do on it, reading up on it. Get outside of what you think you know and find more knowledge to make sense of why you thought that was correct. Because a lot of the times we don't know why we believe what we believe. We just believe it because that's the way it's done and that's the way it's said it's supposed to be done. But if that's really the only reason why you're believing something, you need to step forward and try to find some more information, because maybe that myth isn't serving you because it is a myth. Number 29, happiness requires food, shelter, health, love, successful work, and the respect of one's own herd. I'll say that list again. Food, shelter, health, love, successful work, and the respect of one's own herd. And I love that phrase, the respect of one's own herd. It really is about finding your tribe, finding the people that get you. They don't have to be some people that think exactly like you do. They don't have to be people the same age. They don't have to be people from the same country as you. But finding those people that allow you to be you, that you feel connected to. Sometimes it's your family. Sometimes it's not your family at all. Sometimes it's the people that your own age, and sometimes it's not the people in your own age at all. This is where the journey begins, when you're trying to figure out where your tribe is. 30. Fear is the principal reason why humans are so unwilling to admit facts and so anxious to wrap themselves around in a warm garment of myth. Fear. We've talked about this a few times on the blog, and I will definitely include a few links to this topic and how to address it more deeply. But it's this idea of why are we okay with myths? Because we think they work for us. And in reality, fear is just the wall that's standing between you and more contentment. Break through that fear wall. Ask why, what am I so fearful of? Oftentimes, it's because we don't have all the facts. Well, then find the facts. Once you know what it is you're up against, then you can deal with it. But when we're fearful of something, sometimes we back away from that wall and we don't deal with it. And that provokes even more fear. And it reduces or eliminates any chance for growth and therefore any more opportunity to actually reach that feeling of contentment and happiness. 31, accepting facts and truth is a way to tackle fear and reach true happiness. What we were just talking about. 32, the happy person is someone who lives objectively, who has free affections and wide interests, who secures her happiness through these interests and affections and through the fact that they in turn make the person an object of interest and affection to many others. It's a cycle. One begets the other, and then your contentment grows more and more and more. So give love freely. Don't expect necessarily anything in return. Expand your interests. Continually be searching for what really piques your curiosity. And you'll find happiness there. And that will draw like-minded people, those people in your tribe that you've been looking for, to you and you to them. Number 33, the person who demands affection is not the person upon whom it is bestowed. We mentioned this briefly earlier in the list. But if you are forcing someone, demanding someone, saying, I'm going to do this for you, but you have to do this for me, you're never going to get to that feeling of contentment and happiness in your life, and you're definitely not going to bring happiness and affection to their life. That's not going to make them feel good, and they usually probably, if they're smart and secure, they're going to back away and leave you alone. It's not a healthy way to live, but it's a way to try to control others. And the weaker person will say, okay, fine, I'll do it. But the stronger person says, no, you need to fix something within you because I can't be that fix. I want you and I to come to each other without demands, come to each other genuinely out of interest. And that is going to create a stronger bond. 34, don't think about the causes of unhappiness. Get outside of it. It must be by genuine interest, not by simulated interests. That's a brain scratcher. This is part of that self-absorption. Instead of your life's not going the way you want it to, or you're having a bad day or week, or your job's just not going real well, instead of dwelling on, well, why is your job not going well? Step outside and dive into what you love. Figure out what you do love. Figure out what does make you happy. Remember, we go back to one of the first items on the list. Focus on the state of the world, attaining the knowledge in a variety of avenues, and focus on individuals for whom you feel affection. Get outside of yourself. Build those interests. And miraculously, that unhappiness will subside. I'll give you a perfect example. All of us have nights or days where things just don't go well, or we just get into our head. And for me, this is where meditation has been a huge, huge help. Because I'm one of those people, I will wake up in the middle of the night, and I used to do this a lot more than I used to. And for whatever reason, can't go back to sleep. Maybe one of my dogs, woke up and they were fidgeting, and so woke me up, and then I couldn't go back to sleep. And then my mind starts racing. And then I finally do go back to sleep, and I wake up in the morning and I think, why was I worried about that? Well, oftentimes my day just starts. Okay, I don't have time to worry about what I was worrying about when I was waking up early in the middle of the night. And I get on with my day, the things I love. I go and I get my newspaper and I read that if it's a work day. I get dressed. I enjoy going to my closet, getting my outfit together, and I go to a job that I love. Or if I'm not if it's summertime or on a holiday, I go to the computer and I work on a blog that I love. I stop thinking about what is making me unhappy. And then by diving into what I've loved, I've let that unhappiness go. If we stop thinking about it, it's that whole idea of letting what we fear or we worry about materialize because we think about it. If we keep thinking about what we're unhappy about, more of that unhappiness will accumulate. And I'm guilty of this too. My 20s, I was constantly thinking I should be doing this. I'm not happy because of this. And instead, I started to shift. To dive into things that I loved. Maybe no one else at the time really loved that stuff. And that was hard initially because I didn't have someone to do it with. But then I realized it doesn't matter because I'm loving this and I'm doing it because I sincerely like it. And if someone comes with me, great. If someone doesn't, who cares? But then I eventually started meeting more people that did. And my tribe has grown. And I hope you found that too. And if you haven't, trust me, it will work. It will work. Everyone's going to have different interests, but let me be the first, if I'm not already in a long line of other people who care about you, to know that trust what your intuition is telling you about things that you love. Listen to that little voice and step into that. And your happiness will increase and your unhappiness will become smaller and smaller and smaller. Doesn't mean we're not going to have bad days. Just means now we know how to deal with them. That's the key. That's the key. All right, moving on to 35. Once you let go of self-absorption, let the spontaneous workings of your nature and of external circumstances lead you. So be open to life. Be open to what runs around your mind. Here's a perfect example. So today, this is Sunday, the day before you're hearing this, I'm prepping for the Thanksgiving week. And I just happened to open up the Wall Street Journal off-duty section. And on the front page is this whole article about sparkling wines and how they're a big thing and an everyday dining room table for the meal. And all different parts of the menu can be paired with a different sparkling wine. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm trying to pull together my menu this week to share with my listeners and my viewers. And I have an idea because I have this fantastic sparkling wine I want to share with you. And I just completely tweaked and updated one of my upcoming blog posts. And yeah, let what you love connect with happens and is offered to you spontaneously. And who knows what could happen? Some of you may be thinking, Abel's, that really doesn't sound that fantastic. But that's the thing. It's fantastic for me. It's what I love doing. You're going to have moments like that where things that you love just bounce off the page and it connects with something that's already dancing around your mind. And you'll just think, voila, that's magic. And that's where you're going to find your contentment. Be present. Know who you are. Be curious. Read, learn, go out there and find new things to be interested in, and life will amaze you. Number 36. Only what genuinely interests you can be of any use to you. 37. Undoubtedly, you should desire the happiness of those whom you love, but not as an alternative to your own happiness. So there's a huge and significant caveat. Do give love to those you want to be happy, to help them find their happiness. But if doing so makes you miserable or brings you down regularly, that's not healthy. Last one, 38. Here we go. A happy person feels a citizen of the universe, enjoying freely the spectacle it offers and the joys it affords, untroubled by the thought of death because they feel themselves not really separate from those who will come after them. It is in such profound instinctive union with the stream of life that the greatest joy is to be found. So if you are stepping outside of yourself and becoming curious with the world and learning all different things from all different walks of life and giving to those you love, you already are connecting to the people that haven't even arrived on this earth yet, because you're trying to make this world a better place. You're trying to give more love. This world needs more of that. And you are tapping into your own innate capabilities and curiosities by exploring and gaining new knowledge. And thus, your contentment is going to beget more contentment in others because they're going to want to be around you and figure out how to do it, or they're going to seek you out. Whatever it is, it's a beautiful cycle to be a part of. And I have reread this list many times just to try to absorb everything that Bertrand Russell has said in his book, The Conquest of Happiness. And I'm going to continue to look through it because there are so many different gems in here to contemplate. And it will be applicable to each of our lives a little differently based on where we are and what we've already know and what we need to know that we haven't figured out yet. But I think there's something very profound in knowing what we have control over and what we don't. Knowing that so many of our life choices are either going to make us happy or unhappy, and we really need to take responsibility for that. And we need to stop assuming that so much outside of ourselves that we do have control over, but we forget or we just let go and we let other people decide for us, that we can blame other people for unhappiness. We can't. We have so much more control than we realize by choosing those interests, by being smart about the relationships we start building reciprocal relationships, and understanding that it's not always going to work out that way, and to walk away, and that's okay. That's okay. But your genuine, authentic self is what this world needs. And that's not easy always to give, but it will get easier with a little bit of practice every single day. I'm working on it too. So I'm right there with you. But so far, it's proven to be a pretty contentment-filled way of living. While there is much to digest and contemplate in this list of 39, should I say, ways of finding happiness, what left me with hope was the reality that so much of what causes us pain is self-inflicted. While yes, there are many things that are out of our control, understanding the difference is key. But so too is recognizing when we have played a role that has adversely obstructed us from potential happiness. Simply put, we need to get out of our own way, and this list will help us all do just that. I hope you've enjoyed today's topic. Whether you are traveling or staying put for the holidays, I hope this gives you some room for hope, because your contentment really is in your hands. It really, truly is. In each of our hands, I should say. You can find the show notes at the simplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast 131. And I'll provide a few other posts and podcast episodes from the past and the archives on some of the topics we discussed here today if you're interested in. But now we have a petit plaisir that I think you're going to enjoy. I'll be right back. All right, this week's Petit Plaisir is a Francophile film, so a French film, called Paris, Manhattan. And it was released in 2012, and it stars Alice Taglioni and Patrick Bruel. Patrick Bruel also appeared in one of my previous movies that I recommended on this podcast. He is a delightful male protagonist or co-star, and Alice Taglioni is the first film I've seen her in, but she is an absolute delight. I think you're going to love this film. It is completely set in Paris. It's a 30-ish woman, Alice, her character, who is a pharmacist in Paris, a family-owned business. And Woody Allen's film Manhattan is of great inspiration to her, and which defines her quirky character. And she is nonetheless a woman who thinks for herself. And she isn't afraid to share her mind, but at the same time, she is definitely someone who is looking for love. And it's just lovely. It's simple. Well, let you listen to the trailer, and maybe that will pique your interest. Here you go.
Ma fille est pharmacienne. Tenez, allez la voir.
Tu cherches ton père?
Il recrute pour Alice.
Mais c'est pas vrai, ça. Me marier dans l'année, y a que ça qui l'intéresse. Taxi! Taxi!
Je vais attendre avec vous, c'est plus prudent. Je me suis pas présenté. Victor Blanc.
Alice Omitz.
Bon, qu'est-ce qu'on fait? Je vous raccompagne ou je vous conduis aux urgences? En fait, j'ai acheté un film de votre copain.
J'ai peur que ce soit un petit peu trop fin et pointu pour vous.
Si c'est drôle et émouvant, je peux pas être cueilli, moi.
Pourquoi j'ai dit ça, moi? Vous voulez pas déjeuner avec moi?
Non, coucher à la rigueur et encore.
Vous faites ce que vous voulez, je suis pas votre genre.
Pourquoi vous êtes seul?
Je le suis plus. Il est beau, il est gentil, il aime l'art.
Vous en parlez comme d'un dieu, méfiez-vous.
Vous êtes un grand optimiste. Faudrait que je vous présente ma famille. Vous allez voir ici, on respire la joie et la sérénité.
Dites-moi, ça fait longtemps que votre beau-frère trompe votre sœur? Allô? Se tromper sur les gens qu'on aime, c'est normal.
J'étais pas préparée à ça.
C'est faux. Ces films ne parlent que de ça. De couples qui se retrouvent, qui s'aiment plus, qui se trompent. La vie, quoi.
T'en es où avec Victor? Avec Victor? N'importe quoi.
Vous sentez bon?
C'est votre maximum. Et vous, elle est où, votre folie? C'est vrai, je sais rien de vous. À part que ça devait être une belle salope, celle qui vous a rendu comme ça.
Vous chantez bien.
C'est votre maximum?
So whether you can speak French or not, don't worry, there are subtitles. It actually debuted in 2012 at the Festival of French Cinema in Australia and just became available on DVD in 2013. I'll provide the trailer again on today's show notes, the simplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast 131, as well as links to the soundtrack, as well as the video or DVD or MP3 download on Amazon. I hope you've enjoyed this week's Petit Plaisir, where each week ideas are shared to make the everyday all the more enjoyable. Tune in at the end of each Monday's podcast where I'll recommend a book, a film, or a recipe, anything that is a simple pleasure to satiate your sophisticated taste. Thank you for tuning in to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, stop by the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com, or pick up the book, Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, A Modern Woman's Guide. To stay caught up on the most recent podcasts, blog posts, and receive exclusive news as well as an extra dose of inspiration, subscribe to the Simply Luxurious Life's weekly newsletter, which arrives in your inbox each Friday to enjoy with a hot cup of tea or your morning coffee, just in time to jumpstart the weekend. Until next Monday, I'm your host, Shannon Ables. Bonne journée!